Alright, so exceptions and error messages. They say changes are inevitable, but in the life of Python programmers, exceptions are inevitable. No matter how carefully you plan out your programs, you will eventually run into exceptions. And don't even get me started on this huge wall of text that pops up in our faces when an error occurs. On one hand, it can be quite disappointing to look at. I mean, the code that we've been working on for the past few hours just crashed, right? On the other hand, it can get rather overwhelming to read and understand what went wrong. Also, us millennials are intuitively scared of long texts. I mean, it usually means somebody hates us, right? So, does the Python interpreter hate us? I wish the Python developers made these error messages look a bit more friendly. But hey, it is what it is. So, what can we do? What do these professionals do when they run across these error messages? In their heads, these error messages are just a bunch of clues to debug the issue. And they know exactly where to look for these clues. And this video is all about learning what clues are hidden inside these error messages, where to look for them, and how to effectively use them to debug our code. So that the next time when you run into these error messages, you can tell yourselves, this should be an easy fix. Alright, excited to get started? Let's get to it. Things are going to get a bit more technical, so stay with me, alright? So the technical name for this big wall of text is actually traceback. But why this name traceback? My guess is you can use this error message to trace your way back to the point of origin of the error. And this consists of three parts: the exception message, the name of the exception, and the stack trace. Let's start our journey by looking at the easiest and the most useful of the three, the exception message. Let's start by looking at an example. In this code, we are dividing the number 7 by the number 0, which resulted in 0 division error. As you might have learned in your high schools, you cannot divide a number by 0 in math. If you look closely, on the very last line of the traceback, that is the huge wall of text, you will find a short handy message that briefly describes the problem we are facing. In this case, division by 0. Maybe our original intention was to divide 7 by 10, but by mistake we divided 7 by 0. Now that we have read this exception message, we know exactly what the problem is, and all we need to know is where the problem is in order to fix it. But what if we don't understand what the problem is yet? The exception message is designed to be a single line of text to accurately describe what the problem is. But you can only fit so much in a single line of text. So if we don't understand what this exception message actually means, then how can we proceed? That's where the exception name comes in. The exception name is the very first word of the last line, the same line that contains the exception message. Let's say you're like me and you didn't actually focus on the math class in your high schools, and you have no clue what this division by 0 actually means. Then what you can do is, you can take this exception name, which in this case is 0 division error, go to the website python.org and simply search for this error. You should be able to find a more detailed description of the error. So by now, you should have a complete understanding on what error has occurred. If you're liking this video so far, be sure to hit like and subscribe to help us grow our channel. Now we can proceed to the next step and figure out where the error has occurred. And that's where the rest of the error message comes in handy. This part is called the stack trace. If you're hearing the term stack trace for the first time, don't let the technicality of the name get in your way. Stack trace is just the trail of breadcrumbs to help you track down the spot in code where the error has occurred. Let's look at another example. This time we have two functions, function 1 and function 2. Function 1 calls function 2, and in function 2 we have the zero division problem again. I suggest you pause the video here and have a nice look at the code. Alright, let's run this code and see what happens. As you can see, our program crashed as expected and we are left with this traceback message, aka the error message. The first line is simply the header telling us that an error has occurred and the text below contains clues on where the error is. After that, let's quickly jump to the last line and see what error has occurred, which is the same as the previous case, i.e. the zero division error. Now it's time to figure out where exactly the error has occurred. Conveniently, our dear friend stack trace helps us debug our code in this scenario by unfolding everything line by line. Here the stack trace shows us the sequence of calls leading up to the error. Line 8 of main.py to function 2 and then eventually to function 1. With these many breadcrumbs leading our way, solving the mystery of what the error is and where it is should be a piece of cake. So the next time you run into an exception in Python, first read the exception message. Sometimes this is all you need to solve the issue. If the exception message does not make much sense, then Google the exception name and understand what it means. Once you have a good understanding of what error has occurred, use the stack trace to figure out where the error is. If you want, you can also have your own format of this error text. You can have just the exception message, just the exception name, or just the stack trace, or a combination of all three. If you want to learn how to do that, we have written articles on those topics, which you can find in the links in the description. So, to summarize, this big wall of text is actually called the traceback, and it consists of three parts: the exception name and the exception message, which forms the last line of the error text, tells us what the problem is. And the stack trace part shows us where the error has occurred in the program, down to the exact line. If you found this video useful, be sure to hit like and subscribe to help us grow this channel. If you want to get your basics strong, I suggest watching our video on exceptions. It should be appearing on your screens right now. Alright, I will see you in the next one.